calendar. We'll call the meeting to order for our Lakeview Park Committee meeting today, this afternoon, July 8th. We're downtown currently, and we're also virtually live with the Hitchcock group, as well as some of our fiscal court staff and elected officials. So thank you to everybody for joining us today. We look forward to hearing some updates on the master plan and how we've progressed up to this point. What I'll do, Shannon, I'll get with you as far as a list of your attendees that will be on for today's meeting. I'd just like to kind of keep that in the minutes. Just, you know, who's attending along the way from different agencies as well as our staff. So I'll get with you later on that, because we normally have a sign-in sheet and we're all at the same place. And then we can all sign in here today. So moving forward, item number 3 on our agenda is the master plan progress report. So we'll turn it over to the Hitchcock group, and you can get us up to date on what we've done here recently with our recent meetings and where we stand as of today. The floor is yours.
All right. Well, I will start out. Thank you all for taking the time to have us present to you this afternoon. We've been pretty busy over the last few weeks, as you'll soon see. But just as a matter of introduction, my name's Randy Royer with Hitchcock Design Group. Shannon Creasy is also on in this meeting from Hitchcock. Phil Parnan is from Pros Consulting, and BFW, I believe Susanna Campbell is going to join us, but I think she's having some technical difficulty because I haven't seen her show up yet, but I'll keep an eye out for her. So as far as the agenda goes, we will quickly go over the current status of the project, go over the inventory and analysis of the actual physical conditions of the site. We're going to talk about the community assessment need, stakeholder input. We've had a number of good stakeholder meetings, and we want to share some of the information that we garnered from those. And those stakeholders were representatives of various organizations throughout the community. Then we will talk a little bit about the community survey. We're going to share that with you all. It's a draft. The questions are a draft. We'd like for you to review those before we actually put those on the website. The project website has been created at this point. It's in process. We haven't got, we need to upload some of this information after we've shared it with everyone today, so it'll be up there. And then when we finalize the questions for the survey, we will there will be a link on there to the survey for the general public to be able to provide their input. And then finally, we will go over just the next steps that we'll be going through. Next slide, Shannon. All right, so as far as the current status goes, we are, if you all remember, we're working through really a 3-phase project or 3-step project that analyze, connect, and then envision. And we are at the point where we're wrapping up the analyze phase. We've gathered all the site information that we could get our hands on and reviewed it and started to get our thoughts together around that. So so we've done that, and then we've begun the connect phase. So that really started with the stakeholder meetings and getting the online or getting the project website together, and then also as we get the online survey up. That's part of the Connect phase, as is the community input of it, which is July 17th. So for all of those watching, that's going to be a big day. We would love to have as many people from the community come out and talk to us. We will be at the park on the 17th, and I think you'll start seeing flyers and some announcements on social media, the website, and various other places. Ideally, we get something in the newspaper that would get people to come out to the park, and then also take the survey once it goes live. So with that, I don't know if Susanna has.
Yes,
We're here.
we're here.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Tough when we've got little tiny pictures. I think I need like trifocals at this point.
Okay.
I'll turn it over to you guys.
Okay, I'm Kenny McDaniel with BFW, the civil engineer for this project. I've got Susanna Campbell, who runs our environmental department, and Mark Thompson, who has helped me a great deal on getting everything together. Our task started with environmental summary report, as well as review of the site itself, the conditions, the property, the utilities available. Susanna's going to go through a few things here. We'll kind of tag team this along with Mark. But on this first slide, I did notice that after sending it today that we have an error there that says 132 acre tract. The tract was originally 135 acres as purchased or when the county obtained it. There's been a little about 14 foot taken off for the office building park out of that. And then I believe there's some right of way. We did do the research at the courthouse. The actual deed descriptions do not close in the actual deed. So I strongly recommend, I don't think it's going to change. I think you've got good boundaries around it being roads and the school property and things like that. But a more precise boundary description could be obtained by doing a boundary survey on the property in the future. After that, looking at the soils, wetlands and streams, floodplains, threatened and endangered species, and then geology as well as geotechnical. We'll talk a little bit about that. And then finally, the utilities that are available at the parks. So here we've got the soils. We did do an in-depth thing. I won't go through all of it today. Generally, you've got very shallow bedrock with silt loams, various silt loams all over the site. Basically, what that tells us is with the shallow bedrock and these specific types of silt loams, any structure that is settlement critical or elevation critical, pools and things like that, buildings, any large structures, further geotechnical information needs to be gathered at that location. The soils can, if they have enough clay in them, they can shrink swell with moisture content. And whenever you're dealing with the buildings, you can't have that under your slabs and foundations. We'll touch on this a little bit further in the geology section, but of course there is a area of known sinkholes on the south end of the site. Next slide, please. Susanna.
Okay, so this is the wetland mapper. So you can pull this from online, and it actually will provide you with notable areas of concern that need to be looked at. So in the northern section of the property, there is a blue line there where a stream is draining to the north. We have done a quick on-site inspection, and we don't believe that will be a jurisdictional stream. There's no defined features within that stream, so I think we're fine on that. There's no wooded or wetland areas that were noted on site. There is a pond in the southern portion of the site, which we do think is a connection to the lake on the south side of the road that bisects those two. And we feel like, just based on what we've seen at the site, that the lake overflow is probably what flows into that pond. Again, that's also the area for the sinkhole. And again, we'll talk a little bit more about that in our geotechnical section.
Handle floodplains.
Doesn't look like we have a floodplain on it, so that's, I get that real technical bit there, so
Okay.
there you go.
Next.
So threatened and endangered species, there were multiple species listed for this area according to our IPAC query that is actually performed by utilizing that website with the Fish and Wildlife Service. So they noted bats, freshwater mussel species, and flowering plants. Well, we've performed an on-site walk down, and we don't believe there's any potential bat habitat. The streams and the ponds were not concerned about the mussel species, and there was no noted habitat or identified plants. So we don't feel like this site is going to have any issues with threatened and endangered species.
Go ahead, Suzanne, you starting.
Okay, so for the geology, your main concern is going to be your sinkhole, which is located in the southern portion of the site. It's my understanding that the sinkhole area, the water feature is within the golf course. So honestly, any constructional activities that are going to occur around that sinkhole, we really need to evaluate. If we can avoid putting any type of structures of any size in that area, you'd be better off. So any buildings or structures that you're wanting to utilize would be better constructed on the northern or middle section of the site. And then, of course, geotechnical evaluations where we actually do some on-site drilling is going to help us to understand, what does the soil look like? What does the rock depths and what is it looking like underneath the ground in that area? Because what you want to avoid is any type of activity you could do around that sinkhole could drain the water. And so if that's something that you're wanting to keep that water feature, we just need to be really careful. Any type of construction that we're going to put in that area, we want to make sure it's not going to affect that sinkhole or have settlement issues.
Yes, basically with the karst area and stuff, of course, it can be built on. However, with constructing anything of any size in that area, you would more than likely have to go with a deeper foundation down to bedrock, and then your slabs and stuff, instead of being slabs on grade, would actually be designed as a structural slab so that it didn't rely on any support from if the soil did go away from it, the structure was still sound and operable. It costs the expense of the deep foundations and things for these types of building, especially the larger buildings. It's a substantial amount more than just general construction, shallow foundation slab on grade. So it can be utilized, but if we can keep the larger permanent structures out of that area of karst, I think it would serve you. I think it would help a lot in your investments in the future. So next. Well, I think we kind of just covered this throughout the whole thing. Basically, wetlands are minimal. Basically dealing down at the south end of the site where the karst and foundation issues would be. Threatened endangered species, I think, is a green light for you guys. I don't see any issues there. Utilities, all the major utilities that I can see being used here are adjacent to the site on the right of ways. There's some water lines running through the site that need to be dealt with in construction, but and design. But I think you're poised for development at this location. So, next.
Great, thank you. And BFW does have all of that in a report that we can go ahead and create a link and include that on our website as we move forward. So I'm going to kind of jump into a little bit of the inventory and analysis that we've done. We've taken the inventory data that BFW provided and created more of a graphic analysis to really help show some of the aspects that we're going to be paying attention to as we dive into these next envision phase. So this map really is just a site context map that shows a 5-mile radius from the park. The biggest takeaways here are that you can see downtown is about 2.5 to 3 miles away from the park, which is really a pretty close distance. We've also highlighted some other amenities in the surrounding context to kind of just help provide a larger view of the area. Lakeview Park is a community park, meaning that it's really currently and will continue to be in the future a destination. So people are already willing to drive to this park, and it serves more than just the surrounding residential neighborhoods. So this next map then just zooms into more of a site inventory. This graphic shows you that sinkhole area that BFW was just talking about. And again, that takes up a large portion, about 1/3 of the south of the park. So again, that's just something that we're really going to have to take a look at as we further develop the envision phase. This next map that's north to the right here is more of an analysis of the actual site. So a little bit more of taking a closer look at the current uses and how they interact. As it's been mentioned before, this graphic really does show the amount of uses that are on this site and the flow or lack thereof throughout. This is also another kind of visual representation separating just like the different layers as we move forward. And that'll be this one. So again, this really just breaks up the site as you go from ground up. You have the overall park on the bottom, utilities, and then we kind of go into more of the topography, which again is pretty great throughout the site, as well as then the circulation and amenities, and then canopy. So again, these are graphic representations to really help us understand the site, and it's what's there currently and it's how it's being used currently, and we'll just really study these as we move forward. Are there any questions on the inventory part? If not, I'll go ahead and turn it over to Phil, who's now going to dive into the master plan considerations and review, as well as just the needs assessment.
Thank you, Shannon. So as part of the process, we have reviewed the master plan and consideration additional documents that were provided. Thank you very much. Some of the items will be addressed as we go through this process, such as a new mission statement, additional resources needed for operations, the desire for alternative funding sources. And those were a few of the key points pertaining to the work that we're doing that were identified in the master plan's consideration document, as well as in the master plan. Some of the outcomes that we have found from our review and from discussion over the time that we began this process are year-round programs and events to draw people to Lakeview Park, use a wide range of funding sources to fund the improvements, improve operations, as well as operational efficiencies, create additional revenue streams, and a positive economic impact to the county for the program that's decided to be on the Lakeview Park property. Another item that we took a look at was current promotions and marketing for the County Parks and Recreation Department. And there is a need to improve marketing and promotions to get the word out about the facilities and the activities. We've also reviewed several agreements that were provided, and what we've seen is that there are best practices in place within the majority of the agreements, that costs associated with delivery of terms is also in there, and that there's a good understanding of the cost of service to deliver those services to the community, and those are made part of the agreements as well. We see a need for the county to understand the Farm Bureau Pavilion approval process as we move forward, should there be any changes to that structure. And operations may have alternatives to the housing contract for the future program once it's determined. So we'll take a look at a lot of the operational pieces and have a discussion with you all regarding what is the best way to move forward when we get to that point. Next slide, please. So from the site tour, we have come to understand that the county is primarily a facility provider at this point, utilizing program contractors, user groups such as the YMCA, as well as providing golf for individual users and for user groups such as the school's high school teams. The amenities are spread out and some consume a significant amount of space. The skate park has a federal grant attached to it, requiring approval of any amendments to it, but that type of outdoor recreation must exist. Existing facilities generate minimal revenue and are mostly there for local use. No real regional draw at this time, except for the events that are taking place. Deeper discussions will be needed with the county on operational approach, as I had noted earlier, and how best to transition the department from where it is today to where it needs to be based on the program once it's developed. Ancillary services will need to be improved, such as hotels, additional restaurants in close proximity to the park. City and county infrastructure lacks cohesiveness to be that national draw that was brought up by a lot of a few of the stakeholders in our focus group process. Next slide, please. So the stakeholder input, we did a mini survey to those who participated for a little bit deeper dive. And what we found is the strengths of the existing amenities are the walking trails, the sports field, that it's a location for the fair, and that there is history on the site and heritage that should be protected moving forward, and as well as celebrated, and also providing interpretive signage for moving forward. Those opportunities are improve underutilized areas, sports field improvements, bring tournaments to Lakeview Park, indoor multifaceted gathering spaces. And we utilize those terms because there was a broad range of ideas on what that indoor space could be, from convention center to aquatic center to performing arts center. And so it's ultimately known as indoor multifaceted gathering space until a deeper dive from the survey can be done, and we can truly hone that in a little bit more. Again, heritage preservation we spoke about, and events to the park for economic impact. Priority would be the sports field upgrades and expansion, multi-use indoor spaces, and more county parks. So not just Lakeview Park, but looking at it from a holistic standpoint for a better quality of life for those that may live farther away from Lakeview Park and are looking for additional alternatives. There were a few other comments that we felt were important to bring forward from the mini survey, and that was there were some concerns about budget and funding for development of what the program for the site happens to be. People want to make sure that the fair continues, and then noise concerns with the residential areas surrounding the property. Next slide, please. Likewise, in the focus groups, we looked at opportunities and ran the folks that were able to participate through an exercise to kind of fine tune or hone in on what is really the greatest opportunities moving forward. And so from what you see from the word cloud, revenue generating facilities and amenities were number one on the list. Indoor event space, as well as performing arts, followed up by programming, outdoor amphitheater, motorsports arena improvements, universal playground, and preserving the history had the greatest responses. Next slide, please. In addition, as part of this process, the county asked us to take a look at market definition. And we see that based upon the feedback from the stakeholders as twofold. One, the Franklin County boundary lines, of course, but then beyond that, we took a look at a 5-hour drive time. That 5-hour drive time, just to give some people some context, because I know that's a rather small map, is on the left side or to the west, you see St. Louis sticking out at the farthest west side. To the north, we reach Lake County, I think Gary, Indiana, as far as the Lake Michigan is concerned, just to the north. We also do creep into Michigan a little bit, just north of Ohio. We've got a good portion of Ohio in there, all of Kentucky, much of Tennessee, as well as some of West Virginia, as far as that 5-hour drive time. It does create, because there's no real solid roads to get from one location to another, it does create this little jagged border look based upon what is available as far as roadways for them to get to Lake View Park. We want to also announce that we are the farthest away from the 2010 census that we could be. That is the last published census data, and accuracy tends to be a little bit off the farther out you get based upon the projections being off, whether it be growth or whether a community be retracting in residents. And so there are going to be a couple of different numbers that you will be able to see out there. We currently acquire our data from Esri. They are a very large data warehouse company, and we found the majority of their information to be very reliable. It's just, once again, once you're this far away from the last published census, those numbers do tend to be more off than what they would be otherwise. What we are seeing between Franklin County demographics and the 5-hour drive time demographics are several similarities between the two, and we'll show some comparisons. We'll first start off with Franklin County. Currently looking at 51,365. We've seen some numbers that are roughly 400 to 500 less than that 51,000, but ultimately it's looking to grow at about 0.35% between now and 2035. So roughly about an additional 3,000 people are expected. The race and ethnicity is 82% of the population white alone, 11% Black alone, and only 4% of the population identifies as Hispanic or Latino in origin. Median age is almost 42 years old. And just like we're seeing in most places across the country, the age segments of 55 plus are going to be increasing over the next 10 to 15 years. And in many instances, are going to have a larger percentage of the population than the younger age segments. Income median, yes, sir.
Just real quick, did you talk about the significance of the 5-hour drive time, or why that unit is used?
I was going to, when we get to that slide, the next slide does capture the 5-hour drive time.
Okay.
Thank you. As far as median household income, we're looking at roughly around $57,000, which is above the state average, but slightly below the national average. Next slide. So when we look at the 5-hour drive time, to Randy's point, the importance of a 5-hour drive time is that's when folks really begin, especially if we're looking at a youth and adult sports venue. That's where people start to look at, is that going to be worth our time to travel that far for a weekend, and sometimes it's a 3-day weekend as well too. And so we look at that 5-hour drive time because we have found that there are going to be several different types of facilities that are going to be similar providers within that 5-hour drive time. And we'll base that off of the program once that's fully determined. So we'll be looking at the similar providers more locally within the county until we get that program defined, and then we'll start looking beyond that. And we do have a few slides coming up that will speak to that as well too. So we again see that there's about 28 million within the 5-hour drive time, and that population is expected to grow at a little bit higher rate than what Franklin County is over the next 5 to 15 years. In total, about an additional 2.2 million will be added by 2035 to that entire 5-hour drive time area. As far as race and ethnicity, we find a lot of similarities, such as the 82% of the population is white alone, 10% of the population is Black alone. However, a little bit higher, 5% of the population identifies as Hispanic and Latino. For median age, just slightly younger median age, but also again, ages 55 plus, those age segments will encompass about 40% of that population, just as we've seen with a 39% for Franklin County itself. However, the median household income is a little bit lower than what you're finding in Franklin County, yet it is still above the state average for Kentucky and still below the national average. Randy, was there another point that we wanted to make as far as the 5-hour drive time? You're on mute. Sorry. Didn't mean to put you on the spot, but I just.
That's all right. I don't
you.
think so. I think that, you know, this data, you know, I think it's interesting if you could extrapolate, you know, if they're with the median age at 40 in that 5-hour drive time, it starts to tell you what types of activities or what types of things the average person is going to be looking for, you know, from a demographic standpoint. And it, you know, it's basically looks like that 5-hour drive time is the Midwest at this point.
It is. And again, since they are younger, you're going to find that there's going to be more family opportunities sought out from that 5-hour drive time. And so that's where it's important when we develop the program, not to just look at what's the main function on the site, but there needs to be, you know, 3 to 6 additional ancillary services that help generate revenue on the site. So it can't just be a sports complex. There's got to be other revenue generation opportunities, as well as other opportunities for recreation for those folks who may not necessarily be scheduled in the games, you know, the siblings of some of the athletes, and or during those break times for there to be things for them to do, not just in the park, but also in close proximity too, which is why we talked about some of those attractions and infrastructure needs within that region needing to be bolstered. Now, this is also one of those things that if this type of facility is being built, we can tell you that what we've seen from Grand Park is that there has been a surge of hotels popping up in that area, including on site, I believe for 1 or 2. And so there is an opportunity there to increase revenues or alternative revenue sources by having some of those services contracted out and or leasing space. We know that with the business park that was there, there's an opportunity there either through the remaining parcels to be sold and or leased over long term as another revenue source. And so we'll be taking a look at that as well too. Next slide, please. And this is where we're going to start jumping into some of the finer details as far as trends that we're seeing. So general sports between Franklin County and the 5-hour drive time, Franklin County has a a MPI, and I guess I should go ahead and explain that to you. MPI is the Market Potential Index. And so the national average is 100, and that's the yellow line that you see horizontally across those graphs. What above 100 means is that there's a higher probability for folks within Franklin County to excuse me. I'm hearing some background noise. Would you mind putting, thank you. So as far as golf being at 107, that means that there's a higher proclivity for people in Franklin County to play golf than there is nationally as a whole. Same for softball at 102. The nice identifiers here are that softball for both the 5-hour drive time and for Franklin County is above the national average. When you look at golf for the national average, we have seen that much lower than 99, and we've seen it a little bit higher than the 107 that Franklin County has. So that means, again, that there's more people interested in that within Franklin County than within the 5-hour drive time. But it doesn't mean that it's low enough that it should be a concern if it were to continue within the park. Off to the left, you'll see that basketball has the largest number of participants in the country, followed by golf, tennis, baseball, soccer, and then further down the line, you will see softball, and then some of the non-traditional sports. When you look at volleyball, which also exists within the park, there's 87 for an MPI for Franklin County, where volleyball nationally has not nationally, but for the 5-hour drive time has a 98 MPI. And that's a pretty good MPI for volleyball. Most of, or I shouldn't say most, but some of the proclivity for people to participate is also determined by whether there are actually these types of facilities and amenities in close proximity for them to participate. So what you will find is that the vast majority of that 5-hour drive time is rural, and the rural areas tend to have the least amount of amenities and facilities within them for people to participate. Next slide, please. So when we look at fitness, because health was one of those topics from a programming standpoint that came up multiple times, we took a look at that, and you can see that fitness walking by far is the most popular, and that makes sense. That was also one of the highest strengths for the site of Lakeview Park is the trail system that you all had developed there. Dumbbell weights and free lifting, running and jogging, treadmill, and yoga round out the largest participation across the country. When you look at that from the standpoint of Franklin County, again, walking for exercise and people taking advantage of Lakeview Park trails makes a lot of sense. When you're looking nationally, you see swimming, then walking, or I'm sorry, in the 5-hour drive time, you see swimming and then walking for exercise. And all of them within the 5-hour drive time are below the national average, where just everything with the exception of walking for exercise for Franklin County. So there is opportunity as an ancillary service to provide some of these throughout the weekdays when there aren't major events being held at Lakeview Park to incorporate fitness into the offerings. Next slide, please. This is where we get this is where it gets real interesting. The commercial recreation really speaks to what the opportunities are, both from Franklin County standpoint, as well as from the 5-hour drive time. So when you look at those, there's a lot of similarities, and I want to look at them a little bit closer. I just wanted to show you these because this is where the next chart is actually derived from. So if we could have the next slide, please. All right, so when put side by side, a attending a country music performance is high in both the 5-hour drive time as well as in Franklin County. But what I'm looking for, based on sports and athletic fields being one of the biggest things that we heard from the stakeholders, is I'm looking for number 2 in Franklin County. So you have over the national average of folks who have spent $100 to $100 on sports and rec equipment. And when you look at the 5-hour drive time, now it falls a little bit lower at 104, but what's really telling here is right below that on the 5-hour drive time, those who have spent more than $250 on sports and recreation equipment. Those are the folks that are going to be traveling for those types of a draw. Should the program for Lakeview Park encompass a sports complex of multiple sports. Even as important is, you see Franklin County attended a state fair or county fair at 107, but within that 5-hour drive time, attending a state or county fair was at 108. Also overnight camping and attended an auto show. These are all the same, just in different order between Franklin County and the 5-hour drive time. The biggest tell here is that what you're going to do for Franklin County is going to also be desirable for folks within that 5-hour drive time. And if you were mainly focused on a regional draw to attract economic development, that what you build for that is also going to be applicable to the folks that live in Franklin County. This has to be one of the closest matchups that I've seen. And that tells us that no matter which way we go, so long as we're focused on what the folks in Franklin County would like, or the folks in the 5-hour drive time would like, that there is an opportunity to pull from outside of Franklin County to come to the park for events as well as amenities. Next slide, please. So as part of this, we started looking at similar providers. And I say started because we really need to define the program in order to finalize that. So we just started with the recreation providers, rental spaces, and performance spaces within Franklin County. Once we have the desired program, we'll look at other providers of similar amenities in more depth, but also in that 5-hour drive time. In depth with Franklin County, including what exists and what is planned as new, we're going to want to make sure that we have all of those details, because it's important to complement services, but not necessarily compete with services if there's too many providers within a certain market. And so that's why we're going to take a little bit more in-depth look with Franklin County. In the 5-hour drive time, we'll be specifically looking for the regional draw amenities and similar facilities based upon that program for the conceptual design that we spoke of. Next slide, please. We also started looking at the hotels within Franklin County. I can't recall who had brought this up, and it may have been in our interview, or it may have been in the kickoff meeting, but we do find it important to know what is the capacity as far as the hotels and what's the distance away from the main site where the activities are planned. And so we've done this by distance at this point in time because we're still waiting on a few of the hotels. When we reach out nationally, it's taking us a little bit longer to get a response time to find out how many hotel rooms actually exist. So since we're at this point, we're going to reach out and see if the Convention and Visitor Bureau or Visit Frankfurt has the knowledge of how many hotel rooms each one of these venues has, so that we can understand what the capacity is. Next slide, please. We took a look at the budget as well over the last 5 years that was provided to us, and recently revenues have been trending up since 2017, and that was until 2020 with closures due to the pandemic. And then when reopening, we have noticed a certain amount of customer apprehension that also impacts revenues across the country based upon what we've all been dealing with over the last 15 months. But ultimately, we just wanted to get an idea as to where things currently stand so that as we begin to plan forward, we understand what it will take to transition to the new model as far as programming for Lakeview Park. Next slide, please. We took a look at the same for expenses, and what we have noticed is that expenses have been fluctuating depending upon the year. Some years expenditures are up and some years expenditures are down. And just so you know, this is just operational. This doesn't include any of the capital dollars in case that question comes to mind. So we'll be looking as we move forward into additional cost containment measures and ways to increase the efficiencies of operations as part of the overall plan. Next slide, please. So as part of this, we wanted to make sure that we were getting ourselves prepared for the next leg, which is the survey. The survey will be distributed through SurveyMonkey. And just so you know, we'll pull it up here in just a second, and I'll ask for Shannon to allow me to share my screen in just a minute. But what we have as far as all of the questions are based on what we have been hearing from the stakeholder input and what we've been seeing as far as the documents that we've been reviewing. So we will be providing you this document to go through in full. We are not going to go through a full review of this, but I just want to show you where we're headed with the survey when I pull it up. So look at all of the possible answers and ensure that we have a robust selection. Some of those are based strictly off of what we heard from stakeholders, but some of those are what lies within and or around the site. We want to make sure that there's not any gaps. If you have any additional questions that you believe would be worth considering, we'd love for you to bring those up so that we can vet those and discuss through those. As I said, it will be in the SurveyMonkey format, so individuals will be able to walk through that in more of a discussion type format instead of having all of the questions there and folks not knowing how much longer it's going to take them to finish the survey. We find that doing it in a discussion format where they can see how much is remaining for them to participate in usually gets more folks to finalize the survey. But one thing that we will want the county to be thinking about is the survey announcement and distribution on how to get that out to everyone. Obviously, we know that you will take full advantage of the avenues that you currently utilize, including social media. Encourage each one of the stakeholders to share this with their business and personal networks, as well as all of the user groups that we met with as well too. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And you'll first see yourselves, and then I'll pull the Word document in so that we can go through it in a little bit more detail. All right, so I do want to let everyone know this is our initial draft for the survey. And so this is where it is very beneficial for all of us to take some opportunities to look at this and ensure that we have a good, robust set of possible answer options, as well as the appropriate level of questions. We first start off with asking folks, have they participated in or used any of these amenities or facilities within Lakeview Park? And if they have, we then ask them to rate those on their condition. And so we have captured, I believe, everything that exists there within the park. But again, when we send this to you, please look through this in a little bit greater detail. We also ask them to rate the satisfaction on some of the features for the sports fields, mowing, field prep, spectator viewing areas, concessions, lighting, those types of things. And we do understand that in several instances, it is not only the county that is responsible for these areas because of partnership agreements, but this really helps paint a picture moving forward as to what they think of what's existing, which will help us prepare for what else needs to come as part of the new program. Once we ask those questions, we want to know a little bit deeper. What are the most important to your household of all of these that are listed here? And so we ask that question and ask them to. Now, we are vetting all of these questions and these answers in Word. These questions will not look the same as they do here in SurveyMonkey. So I just want to make sure that is known going forward. There are things where we do have, questions, numbers and such that aren't going to actually be numbered in that specific order. So don't worry about that formatting. Worry mostly about the content of the question as well as the content of the potential answers. And then we're looking to see what programs and events they participated in the last 12 months. As far as those that happen within Lakeview Park currently. And so we have a list of those here. There may be a few that I was not able to find on your website. So again, if there are, please let us know. I think I even have down there, are there any other additional events that maybe weren't on the website or were on the website at an earlier date and came off because they have passed? We also took a look at, or an opportunity to look at indoor amenities and facilities that may be found in Lakeview Park as part of an indoor multifunctional facility. And so as part of that, what we heard from our stakeholders and all of the input we've received up to date, we have included in here as potential answers, including banquet hall, convention space, exhibit space, historic decor, sports opportunities, excuse me. Sports opportunities to which basketball and volleyball, both of my kids have participated in, and we travel regionally and have traveled regionally and nationally for those. And so a lot of convention center spaces make great multi-purpose spaces for these types of sporting events. Also, indoor swimming was brought up, as well as indoor fitness type facility with track and multi-purpose rooms, performing arts and auditorium, which I think should be separated as such, playground and play space, and senior gathering spaces. And the reasons senior gathering spaces did not come up specifically, but programming for all ages came up in the stakeholder input that we received. And so felt like we should put that space in there as well too for consideration. And then once again, we're asking, what do they feel out of all of those that are above are most important? And then because there is a potential for an indoor-outdoor component as far as amenities and facilities go, we then began to identify all of the outdoor amenities which were brought up from the stakeholder groups, and we've placed those in here for consideration. And once again, asking which four are most important, that really helps us establish priority as far as the questions are concerned and the answers. We then took a look at programs and services at Lakeview Park that may not currently be offered. And so we have adult sports and identified a few as examples: after school programs, out of school camps, art classes, community dances, community special events, conventions for economic impact, fitness and wellness programs. So we have a plethora of opportunities here, trying to cover what the stakeholders asked us to for all age segments within the community, just to make sure that we can gain some additional input when we test this in the general public for the community-wide survey. And then obviously we have asked them again for their top four. And this is where we get into some additional questions that are not necessarily specific to the program, but will have an impact on operations overall. So we're looking at, please check all the ways that they currently learn about Lakeview Park programs and events, and we have what we could find listed here. If there are other avenues that you use for promoting those, by all means, please feel free to let us know, and we'll get that updated to include. One thing I did want to point out is that there is not a Lakeview Park, or I should say Franklin County Parks and Recreation Facebook page. It appears that it does exist, but that it is not been created by the county. It looks as though there are posts from just general people on Facebook. And this would be a concern moving forward for sure. It's important for you to control the content that is on any social media that has your name. And so moving forward, we would suggest that you all reach out to Facebook, claim that page, and make it something more. There are some great pictures of people enjoying themselves currently within Lakeview Park at events, at the fair and such. But it's just a little bit better for opportunity for the county to be able to promote through that. And that is, again, unless one county page is all that you would want to exist, then just claiming that and essentially putting a static image on it and linking it to the county's main social media page would work. We then asked what are the three information sources that they would prefer the most. This really tells us how best to reach the folks from Franklin County to let them know what's actually taking place within the park. We're also interested in knowing currently what are the reasons that prevent them from using the amenities, facilities, or programs and events within Lakeview Park. One thing that I want you to give careful consideration to, and it's varies wherever we are in the country, is number 20. Some people just want health and safety concerns. They may be their own personal safety concerns. They may be health and safety concerns to COVID, but it's health and safety. And some people feel that it's not necessary to put COVID in. So ponder that as we go forward and let us know whether we want to keep that on there or not. But it's still a viable answer overall for folks to select should they not be utilizing the facilities or programs. I like this question a lot. If only took $100 for the improvements below, how would you allocate the funds? This is another way to see where people would put their money into what matters most to them. You can ask what's important to them, and they may think, the softball fields are important because Susie is currently in softball. But if you ask them to pay for it, it might be a different answer. And so we like to ask this. We want to make sure that you're in agreement with all of these opportunities. But we also really like to not have more than 7 or 8 of them in here. But we do have some of the things that we've either read from the 2017 master plan and or other documents provided to us and have heard from stakeholders. Lastly, we have how supportive would you be on certain major actions that the county could take? This is another one that requires you to take a look at and see if this is something that you would really be willing to do. Some of these you may think, that's not really important. And I'm not picking on fitness, but let's just use that as an example for right now. You may be thinking, well, developing a new outdoor exercise or fitness area may not be important if we're only going to be providing majority youth sports and adult sports, such as softball, soccer, and if indoor, basketball and volleyball. But this is one of those ancillary activities that is a draw for those who may not be participating in those tournaments at that time, and is also one that would be utilized locally. So from this, we'll plan to put together a list from the results that basically identify the highest priorities and where that priority came from. Was it a stakeholder? Is it a ancillary activity that's needed to help boost the revenue? And we'll define those so that we can really nail things down and get more specific as far as making final decisions for the program once it's in place. So take a look at all of these potential actions that the county could take and make sure that they're all, that you're okay with all of them. I like to tell everyone it's important to it's good to ask questions, but it's more important to ask questions that you're willing to accept all of the answers to. In this instance, if there's something in here that there's just no way that that's a possibility, then it's probably best not to leave it in here. And we did take some creative liberties as we went through this based upon our site tours, all the documents we read, the community input, what we're seeing nationally as well. And then we're asking them which one of those top would they be most willing to fund of those major actions. Lastly, rate the overall value that you receive. And then we get into our demographic questions. Which age group best describes your age? What is your birth gender? How many years have you lived in Franklin County? And then I've got 2 additional questions that I went back and forth on asking, whether we should or not. But just from a understanding standpoint, there's a couple of golf questions that we could ask. Are they a member? And if so, about how many rounds do they play each year? And any other additional questions that you may think of, we'd be more than happy to vet with you. Any questions on the survey draft before we move on?
Hey, Phil, I have one for you, please.
Yes.
So what do you all estimate this survey would take time-wise for an individual to do?
Currently about 10 to 15 minutes. So any additional questions we add obviously could add to that.
I guess I'm just a little worried it might be a little too cumbersome. I know when we've tried to do surveys in the past, 10 to 15 minutes is a lot of time for people. So that's just me talking. I'm nervous about somebody getting a quarter way through and saying I'm done.
Yeah.
I had that 5 minute in my head, and I don't know if there's statistics that show how long. I know people's attention spans aren't that long. So I know everybody on this call is super into this project, but your average mom sitting at the soccer field might not be so. So I'm just talking out loud here, but I'm wondering if we could streamline it somehow. And I don't know if anybody else has thoughts on it or not.
How are they going to do this? Are they going to do this on an iPad that you're going to provide them? They're going to do it on their iPhone when they come in? You said it's going to be a Survey Monkey. So is that
correct?
So how are they going to do it?
So the survey is electronic. And so they would need to do that on their laptop or computer. Some people will do that at work. Some people can do it it's also mobile friendly. So it can be done on an iPad as well as on the phone. So very good question. This is not a survey that we would be going out and asking individuals each one of these questions. Because when you're doing intercept surveys, you're really looking at about 5 minutes worth of time that people are willing to give when they're called intercept, because you are intercepting and or interrupting them for what they're doing on location at the park. So those are kept down to about 5 questions, where this one, to the earlier point made, is very important information. It would be rather difficult for us to streamline this without diluting the information we'd be getting and ultimately having a negative impact on the program, as well as the outcomes that are desired from the program for Lakeview Park. So we'd really want people to be encouraged that this is one of the most important things that's going to come to you regarding your county park system, and please take the time to fill it out. It is 10 to 15 minutes, and we know how valuable people's time is, but we also know how valuable people's money is and how valuable their recreational experiences are. So taking a little bit more time to fill this out would be ultimately worthwhile in the long run. So I'd hate for them to give up that instant gratification of having 5 to 10 more minutes of their own time to forego that long-term gain and possibility of improving people's lives within Franklin County by not taking this survey in full.
One, Phil, I think to piggyback on Squire Muller's comments, it needs to be stated up front that this survey will take 10 to 15 minutes, and this is the importance of the survey, et cetera, whatever you just said, all all the things.
Okay.
Make sure that that's in bold letters up there, and please fill out the entire survey because of its importance to what goes on. Secondly, there's three things here. Secondly, this is not the survey that that residents aren't going to be filling out on July the 17th between 9 and 11. Is that correct? There's another survey that they're going to be doing at that time?
Randy, did you want to speak to that?
Well, I think we could add, and I think the team needs to talk about that too. We've been wrestling with how we want to handle the July 17th. And as of right now, the plan was to have a few boards with, plans that we can actually talk to folks. But as I listen to you all and hear your concerns, I think it might be a good idea, Phil, if we did a small survey and even have something that people, some cards that people can fill out just while they're right there if they don't have a phone or what have you. Just a quick 5 question survey, because what we were planning on doing was some of us would stay at the pavilion and others would go out into the park, and we'll have on T-shirts that say, ask us about, the park, the new or the park planning.
I think if Randy, if you will approach it on the 17th as needs assessment, a wants assessment for the park itself. What are you interested in? There's pieces in that Survey Monkey that could be used and get you that same information, that information that would be vital and could be added to the Survey Monkey in the end from one piece or another. So look at it that way. It can be a shorter version of the Survey Monkey. They can fill it out with a pen in 5 minutes.
Yep.
And the third piece that I didn't see on there, and maybe I overlooked it, didn't see it. I think it's important for the residents to tell us how often they use the park. You're asking the golfers to talk about it, but I think it's also important that everybody else that uses the park tell you how often, if they ever use the park. So I think that should play into some of this too.
I would agree. I like that. We will add that question. And actually that question is definitely a good one for us to ask when we're out on site, going out towards soccer and some of the other areas in the park to ask people. Thank you.
Okay.
And we will add an introduction to the beginning of that survey before I send it out to you.
Okay. Scarmo, are you okay with that?
Yeah, I guess thank you, Rich. I think, Phil, the only other thing was, and this is what you do, and I appreciate everything you guys have put together. Is it super important to have all that background information? Because just for me looking at this, I guess I'm more like, what would you like to see? What other amenities would you like? Maybe, because it seems to me like the survey, maybe 50% of it is a past, what do you use, how often do you use it, things like that. And I don't know if I think that's where I was talking about the streamlining. Could we ask less of what they've done in the past and maybe more of what they'd like to see in the future?
Yeah, I think that's possible. Typically, we ask those questions for what's existing to know what is more utilized, what is underutilized as part of the process. So that it doesn't necessarily need to be in there if we're only looking forward and have the opportunity to move forward with whatever it is, regardless of what exists there in the park today. But I think what we'll find is that there's a lot of endearment for some of the amenities that exist, and it might be worthwhile to still ask that question and see what are the most utilized components of the park today. Obviously, I would say trail is going to probably come in number 1, given what we've been hearing up to this point.
Right.
But ultimately, we'll defer to a collective understanding as to whether we want to ask those questions or not. So once you have an opportunity to review that in full, think about that a little bit more. If you all still feel that way, then we can streamline it and remove those questions.
Question, Phil, will people filling out the survey, are they gonna be allowed to progress forward even if they skip a question, or if they say, hey, I don't have an answer to that, or I want to move forward, I want to skip over it? Will you be able to accept incomplete surveys and still compile that data?
We can set that up however we like. So we can require that certain questions be answered. And if we don't require that they're answered, people can skip those questions and go to a different question. But in many instances, for those questions, we do have, I don't know, or doesn't apply to me, those types of answers as well too. So they could still click that one and move on a few of those questions. But that's something to give consideration to as well. And that's a really good question that you asked, Charlie. I appreciate that.
I think it probably cause more people to move forward than to give up on doing a survey. Well, I don't know how to answer that. Well, I'm just gonna give up. How do I answer that? I'm not sure. And then they give up. So anyway, good.
We'd much rather have them skip one question than give up on the whole survey.
That's exactly right. Squire Tracy, you haven't said anything. Do you have something to add?
No, sir, I'm good. Thank you.
I see Mark Kopp on here, Superintendent of the Franklin County Schools. Mark, do you want to say anything, ask any questions about the survey?
Sure, I have no questions other than just to reiterate what some of your other folks have said. I appreciate seeing the data, and I look forward to seeing data back from the survey. And I do hope we keep like Michael said, keep a look forward on this. This is a real exciting time for us. And any assistance that you all need from the school system, consider it done.
Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Charlie.
Phil, what's your deadline as far as us kind of running through this and saying, hey, add this, take this out, type scenario? I guess you want us to kind of look through it and edit it and then send it back, and then you all are going to go live at some point?
Correct. Randy has the overall schedule, but our hope is now that we've got to this point and have our information, we are hoping that, over the next 4 days is an opportunity for you all to take a look at this and to respond to us so that we can make any changes and hopefully go live on Monday and or Tuesday with the survey.
Okay, sounds good. Does anybody have any additional questions?
Robert or Ann? Robert? Ann?
No, I don't. Thank you.
Okay.
Hey, Randy, can I ask you, or maybe Shannon? So I'm assuming once we get to this point, you all are going to compile, all the meetings we've had with stakeholders. There'll be a large email that goes out reiterating the event on July 17th, the Survey Monkey and things like that, correct?
Yes, as far as that goes, we've got the next step slide up here. The plan was that if you look to the right, we'll have a poster that we want to share with you all to get up on the county website. Basically any of your Facebook websites, get it out there into the public. If there's an opportunity for you to get downtown and put it up in some of the storefronts or delis or coffee shops, that would be fantastic. And just share it so that we can get people out to the community event on the 17th. So that was the plan.
Squire Tracy?
Thanks, Judge. Randy, quick question. I know in the past we've mentioned using or partnering up with the school systems, whether it be the county system or the city independent system. Would it be possible, and with
Mr. Cop on here, maybe he can tell us, but would it be possible to get the surveys sent to those groups to where we can use them, partner with them to get those surveys sent out to parents in the system?
Yes.
And those surveys filled out?
Yes, we can. And I don't want to speak for Houston Barber because, you know, he's always on vacation. He really doesn't. Just kidding, Houston. If you see this, I'm just kidding, my friend. But I would assume he would say the same thing that I will. That is, we can use our one call system to be able to send that information out. Be very happy to do that.
Thank you.
I think
So,
ideally what we'll do is this web, Andrew's already done a great job of setting up this website as part of the Franklin County website, just kind of a subset of it. So I think if we can provide everybody with a graphic similar to this, it has a QR code, but also for those who are not as familiar with QR codes, we'll just have a link. And the survey will be able to be used from that website. So it'll just be a link to the survey from just our Lakeview Park Master Plan website. So rather than sending like a separate link where I think it'll just get a little bit confusing, we'll just direct everybody to the same website. Does that make sense? Okay.
That'll work.
But yeah, we can share a graphic that can then be shared through the schools, through, you know, any other community event.
All right. Get the information to Andrew. Also send it to Charlie, Robert, and then we'll get that out to everybody else and make the changes that we need to and get it back to you as quickly as possible. Give us a date that you want it all back by so we can work towards that once you send it out, okay?
Well, if you can get us, if we're talking about the survey questions, if you can get us the survey questions by the 11th, that gives us enough time that will work, won't it, Phil, to get the survey questions on SurveyMonkey and get everything linked together and go live on the 12th, or do we need it by the 10th?
No, that's enough time.
Okay, so if you can get it to us by the 11th, I know it's kind of hurry up offense, but we're really wanting to get this out and available to people, and then be able to start spreading it around the community, the links, so we can start getting people to respond.
Okay. And Shannon, you did say that you're going to put a link up there as well as the QR code, because many people don't use the QR code. Okay?
Yep,
Right?
I'll make sure it's shared.
What'd she say?
I think she said, I think, for sure.
Yeah, there'll be a link and the QR code.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't hear it.
Not a problem.
All right. Charlie, you want to end it up?
Yeah, so we'll work on that as far as getting some information back to you guys, so you can go live on Monday the 12th. The next big thing too, I guess, will be July 17th, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Lakeview Park, Hancock Pavilion area. Should be a food truck there available for people. There'll be some soccer games going on. There'll be lots happening. So hopefully that'll be well attended by the community as well as the soccer games. And we'll go from there.
Great.
Okay.
All right, well, thank you all. Squire Tracy, we still have a couple more things. Squire Sebastian, I'm sorry you've been put on hold, and you can come on to the Hitchcock group. Thank you all. We'll be in touch, and I'm sure all of us will see you on the 17th and hear from you before that, and we'll keep moving forward. At some point after the 17th, you might want to set up another meeting with Charlie so we can get back together and gather up information and do some more talking.
Sounds good.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you
everybody.
all.
Thanks, guys. Okay.
Andrew, do you have Squire Sebastian?
You want to do
She's with us, I believe.
Get her on.
you want to go ahead and do
Yeah,
that?
go ahead, get her
So
on.
she doesn't have to wait. Good. Squire Sebastian. Can you hear us?
She's coming on. She was having some connection problems earlier, but
I am.
there we go.
All right. We can hear you. Can you hear us, Squire Sebastian?
Hi, everybody. So
Might have to drive somewhere else. We'll come back to her. I mean,
I don't know if you can drive.
I don't know where she is.
yeah, I'm not sure if you're hearing me. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we're hearing you. Don't see
I
you.
want to thank the facility of Lakeview Park and benefit the community all in one activity.
Sherry, we can't hear you.
Yeah, Sherry, if you don't mind, here's what we'll do. We'll talk about the event. It's fine. I'm sure it's gonna be fine for committee. What, if you would just send an email to Charlie and he'll send it to us about what you're gonna do. And the park committee, you have a issue, you know what she's gonna do. You don't have a problem with it, do you?
No. I guess my question I was gonna ask Charlie, I meant to call you, like on something like that, can the county get behind it and like be the sponsor, like and waive the Carter House fee? Because I know.
I already paid for it. I already paid for it.
Oh, well, I don't know if we can take your money. It's donated to cancer. I think that's what it's fundraising for somebody,
Relay
right?
for Life.
Yeah, so that's why I was wondering. I mean, this is a good community. It sounds like a good community thing. The first one was, I mean, over 100 cars.
Yeah, that
Yes,
all-
it's-
Yeah, you all can.
So that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, absolutely.
So sorry, I don't know what happened. I guess when everybody else left, I wound up leaving too. So it sounds like you all are clearly aware of what the proceeds would benefit, which would be the Cancer Relay for Life. Any production fees for the activity could be sponsored by members of Franklin County government, so that, as I heard some of you saying, 100% of the proceeds would go to the local Relay for Life efforts. I have reached out to the Franklin County Cattlemen's Association and Taylor Bell's Ice Cream. They're going to be on site should anybody want to get a great state seeing a local community organization and a local business. So it sounds like everybody is well versed and has heard about this at this point. What questions would you have for me?
What time does it start?
5 p.m. till 8 p.m. on Friday, August 6th. And it will be at the Carter House. They're on the lawn around the fencing area that separates the Lakeview Park County property from that of Franklin County High School.
And if somebody wanted to donate, would there be a way to donate at that facility?
Yes, we're presuming that people will come and donate at the facility that day through.
You've cut out. So that's the kind of information that we would need to get out. We need to get that out on our. You're cutting out, so if you can get that information.
We're going to have.
We need to get that on Facebook. Andrew needs to get that.
Activities. That
Andrew, would you send Sherry a text, tell her to get you that information?
That
And we'll
come
move on,
and
Andrew.
register at the event will actually. I'll do it.
Yes.
I'll get it to Andrew. Thank you.
Yeah, if you'll get it to me, Squire, I'll make sure we get it out everywhere.
Okay. All right.
Thanks, Sherry. Thanks, Andrew.
All right, Charlie.
But Judge, is it a possibility that, I mean, that we were listed as a sponsor? I mean, is that something we can do through committee?
I think we need to, I don't know. I'm gonna have to talk to Rick
I
about
just
it.
think it'd be good
I don't have
for
a
the
problem. I would
community.
be all in favor of it,
Yeah.
but I don't know whether Rick would.
Well, I think as an executive committee, you all can make that decision.
I know, that's not my point. I don't know whether Rick will say that you as a fiscal court can do those things. I don't know. The committee can say that, but if Rick says, no, you can't, then we can't do it. Let me find out.
Can I go ahead and just make a motion for shits and giggles, and then we can vote on it, and then you take that to Rick? Oh, sorry, I said that out loud.
But,
I guess I'll make a motion that the fiscal court be a sponsor for the event, and that we donate the Carter House rental fee is really all we're doing. So,
You want a second?
I second it. Yeah.
Squire Tracy, you still with us?
I think Squire Tracy left us.
Okay.
Okay, but anyway, I.
Yeah, okay. Just,
And if we can, but I need to talk to Rick.
Okay.
Rick's mother died. He's not in the office right
I didn't
now.
know that.
Yeah,
Okay.
and so it won't be till Monday time.
That's fine.
Rick.
Okay, what, we
I think it'd be good for the community.
know the intent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, well, we'll move forward and we'll move on to the sewer pump station, Mr. Hewitt.
See, you replied to the email, I believe, didn't you, that you were okay with it?
Yeah, I was just a little concerned. I didn't know how the elevations were gonna work with the walking or the cart path or something. That was my only thing. When I went up there and I tried to look at where they were talking about how it's gonna come off the road. That was-
The new entrance?
Yeah, the one they proposed, so it doesn't cut through the whole thing. That was the only. So did they answer how they're gonna, do you know?
No, they haven't answered yet.
Okay,
Judge, are you okay with the new alignment of the road? Okay, and then I can't remember if Scotty had replied back or not, to be honest with you, this is kind of one,
I didn't,
because
I
if
didn't
they,
see.
you know, I prefer to have the majority of the committee be
Yeah.
okay with it.
You've got the majority.
So
He
that's-
said he's for it.
and all of them.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
don't want anybody opposed to
Yeah.
it, because what the sewer department would do next is instruct their design team to go and prepare easement documents. That
Right,
would be presented to the court. So it'd be for both temporary construction.
Are you trying to get it done for the 23rd?
No, no.
Okay.
No, I don't think it's that kind of rush, but.
There's a step.
Yeah, they would prefer to secure the easements before they complete design.
Yeah.
Is all.
Charlie, did you see what I was kind of asking? I guess maybe just send it to Robert. I'm just not sure how they're gonna come off the road because there's a big elevation change.
There's a drop.
So I
there's a
didn't know,
ditch.
there's a ditch, but then the cart path and everything, I'm assuming it's gonna have to, I don't know what it's gonna do.
Well, there's a sidewalk.
Sidewalk, maybe.
Right,
yeah.
Sidewalk, fence, then green space, and then the cart path.
Right, so I just
There's
didn't know,
actually-
I just don't know how it would all transition, which
Yeah.
an engineer or whoever's gonna show us.
They don't have,
Yeah,
Right.
they'll have to bring
Yeah.
in Phil and.
Because, you know, they're,
Just like you all have to go through that kind of stuff. You design, you know.
so yeah, they would construct it to support their big
I'm-
back truck.
Yeah,
So,
I'm fine with it. yeah.
They would want the grade as flat as
Yeah,
possible,
yeah.
obviously.
Obviously. yeah.
So, you know, so if you all are okay, I'll go ahead and advise the sewer department that they can go ahead and present us with some easement documents for consideration by the court.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Should be agenda item.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. You make copies of the exhibits and all that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and have that, have them give a,
Presentation.
yeah, not a presentation, but just kind of a summary on how they're gonna make sure that the contours, it's not so hilly and so steep that
And
they're
we'll
gonna
call
level it up.
flooding and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah, yeah.
Gotcha.
Sure,
Make sure
that's
that-
all it is, yeah.
So you can give kind of a look at, this is what it's gonna look like.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate
Thank you.
And then that design documents, we want that whole median going down Georgetown Road. We want that landscape and beautiful.
Plant with trees, now we're talking.
Not just grass.
Uh-huh.
Like that,
I thought they did say they were.
like that down to that. Well,
No, around the
that's-
pump station, they will.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah, he's talking out on Georgetown Road.
Yeah. Yeah, make that nice.
It would be nice.
Okay, all right, we're on board with pump station.
Great, thank you.
Other business, of course, we did the car show, Relay for Life for that. Any other business?
The painting of the pickleball courts was, Andrew put it out on the Facebook and there's been lots of hits, comments about it. The only thing that's lacking now is the netting. It's
Fencing.
fencing.
With the new budget that just kicked in.
And
we're
have you
able to-
ordered it?
Yeah, it has not been ordered, but it's on the
then order it, because
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
what people, that was the only negative comment was, is that. there needs to
Chasing
be-
balls down the hill.
Yeah, they're chasing them all over the place. So
Okay.
get that fencing. It shouldn't be expensive. You should be able to get it.
Does that just go on the one side, Charlie?
It goes on the ends.
On both of them? Okay. Yeah. Is that something you guys install, or we have to have a company to?
We'd have to get somebody to.
And I think you need a picnic table in that pavilion there.
I've got two.
You do now? Okay, that looks really good. So you say on the ends, don't you need it on that right side?
Well, I'll see what, we put some money in the budget for pickleball fencing, so I'll see how far we can go with it.
I would think you would need it on the right side more than anything, because
could.
that's the hill. You gotta chase it down to the skate park.
Between that and skate park, right?
That looks really nice.
So Charlie, let me ask you, where the pavilion is, how do you anticipate putting a fence on that side? Are you gonna put it on the other side of the pavilion?
No, with their be, we'd have to put in a gate.
So you're just gonna secure it to the concrete?
Yeah.
Okay.
You're talking about a metal fence there. I thought you were talking about just a plastic fence.
No, just like the ones of, usually the chain link, but with the plastic black coating on it. The black vinyl coating, whatever it is.
So it's like a 4-foot chain link, but it's coated with
Yeah.
black plastic.
Yeah. So
Make
on
sure
that-
it has gates in.
Yeah, on that end, it would have a gate. where you
Put
could-
it gates on every side, because I don't want
Yeah.
people climbing over the daggone thing, and they will.
Because the ball will
Yeah,
at some
yeah.
point. go
Whatever, 3 gates,
So basically you're saying 3-sided fence.
a 3-sided fence needs probably 3 gates.
Pedestrian gates.
Okay, got it.
Like on tennis courts where they put up that green, where they put up the opaque type screen.
That's windscreen.
Oh, that's just a windscreen.
Yeah.
Do they do that on pickleball courts?
No.
They don't.
Pickleball's
sells-
so light that if it's windy, they're not gonna play.
Oh, where can you buy pickleball?
Dick's
Where?
has it.
Oh,
Every
yeah.
sporting good has pickleball.
Oh,
It's basically a wiffle ball.
really?
Yeah, and a wooden paddle.
Yeah, it's a plastic ball. It's a little bit bigger, about the size of a softball almost.
But it's light.
It's light.
Huh.
Yeah.
But it's popular.
Oh,
Yeah, I
it
mean,
is.
it
It
is
is.
big time.
Well, that's a nice looking.
Yeah, you all did a fantastic
Thank you.
job. People from all over central Kentucky have commented about it, but they want that fence. Yeah. So get that fence up.
It's always that one thing, Charlie.
Yeah, I get it.
You know
Yeah.
that's your,
Oh, I
make sure of
understand.
your job, my job,
Yep.
Robert's job, that's what
Are
we're
you gonna
doing.
put bleachers like on the concrete area? The pavilion or what?
At the pickleball?
Yeah.
Well, if there's 2 picnic tables at the facility, or for somebody to sit down and take a break, but I mean,
I
if we
think
get
that's all
word,
that's needed.
yeah, I mean, if somebody wanted to have a tournament or something, we
Yeah,
could always
tournament.
transport one in, just affordable.
Yeah, that's the first time I've seen that. I've been to the park in a while, so you can bring your own chair, I guess if you want to.
Oh, yeah, bag chairs.
That's what we do at tennis. We bring our own
Oh, do you?
camping chair,
Okay.
because there's no benches when we play tennis.
I think that'd be fun to play over there.
Yeah, I've been it with it too. All right,
Okay,
anything else?
Good.
Anything else?
Motion to adjourn?
So moved. All right.
Thank
Good
you.
deal. Thank
We'll
you.
probably need to meet again after the 17th, Charlie.
Oh, yeah,
Keep it rolling.
yeah, definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
guys.